All right. I am Amy Schlappy, as you all know, the Executive Director of Hood River County Transportation District. And we do business as Columbia Area Transit. And also like to add that, people know us as the Cat Bus. So Isela, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, hello. My name is Gisela Ayala Chavarria. I currently work at One Community Health as an operations analyst. I've been here since 2019. I started off as a community health worker and was promoted last year to operations analyst. But yeah, one thing that I'm excited for after work. Well, I'm getting off work pretty late, so just the idea of being home, I think, is just, I would say, relaxing. I have some PTO this week, and so today's my last day working. And after that, I am just gonna be home and relaxing.
And I forgot to add that I'm excited to take my little daughter to the playground. She loves the sled, like a little too much, but it's a lot of fun. All right, Taylor, why don't you go ahead?
Hi. Okay, great. I'm Taylor England. I'm a service coordinator at the Detman House in Hood River. And I also do development work for Culture Seed in White Salmon. I'm actually going to a fundraiser tonight for Culture Seed. It's like the Gorge Speakeasy series. There's like storytellers at the ruins, and I've never been. And one of our staff is going to tell a story, and I'm really excited. And usually I just go straight home. So I feel like, ooh, midweek, staying out on the town. I am a little sleepy, but I'm excited.
Hi, Lexi.
Hi, Alexi Stickle. I work with Pacific Source and the Columbia Gorge CCO that serves Medicaid members in Hood River, Wasco counties. And I am so sleepy. I actually had a big night last night for a Tuesday and went on a hike and ended up getting really nervous that they were going to close the gate on us. So like practically ran the last couple miles, feeling very sore today, but I'm signed up for a workout class tonight in the Dalles, but after that, I'm very excited to lay down and go to sleep.
What hike did you do last night?
The Dalles Mountain Ranch. So I live in the Dalles, and Dalles Mountain Ranch is just across the river from us. Super easy to get to. Beautiful wildflowers, and they have this pesky gate over the parking lot that says like open, I don't know, 7 a.m. to dusk. And what does dusk mean? And that's what we debated as we were running back to the car, very worried that we were passing the hour of dusk.
That makes sense. It's good to know that the wildflowers are out. I'm planning on going hiking this Saturday there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the balsam root are probably just past their prime, but lupins are out full blast.
Awesome. Good to know. Well, great. So today's meeting is all about updating you all on what we're planning for the next fiscal year. So our fiscal year starts July 1st, 2023 and goes until June 30th, 2024. And we're just finishing our budget right now, so this is like the perfect time to kind of tell you about what we're planning. And I was really hoping to get your feedback on a couple of things, but feedback just in general on our projects. And maybe hear if you have any suggestions on things I should think about as we are kind of finalizing those plans for next year. I would love to hear it. Also, our transit master plan process, which Taylor has been a part of, the final hearing for that will be May 17th at our board meeting. We're expecting it to be adopted. So fiscal year 24, it's going to be that year that we start to lay the groundwork to really get the ball rolling on a lot of those projects that have been identified in the transit master plan. So what I'm going to do here is share my screen. Okay, you guys all see my first slide with the pretty springtime?
Yes, we do.
Wonderful. All right. So I did want to update you all because the last time we spoke, you guys approved and created priority levels for some statewide transportation improvement funding, discretionary and statewide transit network applications that we had submitted late last year. And they have been fully funded. So they've all been approved or awarded to us at the full amount that we asked for. So that's pretty great. Specifically on the Columbia Gorge Express, there was debate on funding it at a lower level than what we had asked for, which would have precluded the expanded summer service where we add a couple of services a day during the summer to help reduce the congestion and safety concerns at Multnomah Falls and just the increased visitors that we see during the summer too. These expanded service or the expanded service level helps mitigate those impacts on the gorge. So that was great. And then the intelligent information systems, this was something that ODOT was very excited about. They see it as a way as rural transit districts kind of taking the lead on doing pilot programs, of seeing how we can use technology to improve our services. So they're excited about that. Oh, and Kevin has joined. Kevin, are you there? All right. Thanks for joining, Kevin.
Sorry about that, everybody. Pardon my tardiness. Thank you.
No worries. I'm just updating the group on the STIF or the Statewide Transportation Improvement Fund discretionary applications that you all had prioritized and approved. And so we were awarded all of them, and they were awarded at the full amount, which is exciting to hear.
Congratulations.
Hey, thank you. And then the third one is a project that was applied for MCED, but CAT contributes toward the match fund. And this is for continued outreach and awareness of the 4 different Columbia Gorge transit providers to ensure that we are spreading community awareness in an equitable way, but also ensuring that the Gorge Pass program continues to live on. It will live in a different form, but it'll continue to live on and reach folks and locals as well as visitors, and allow community members to go throughout the gorge by using just one little pass. So that is also a wonderful news. So these are our projects for the fiscal year 24. Well, these are the projects that we will do for both years, so the fiscal year 24 and fiscal year 25. But this is looking at the dollar amount that we are expecting to see. It might be a little less than that. The way that the funds work, Gisela, so you're aware, this comes from a payroll tax. So there is the opportunity for it to flex, and this is something that we watch fairly closely. So every quarter, we just automatically get a certain amount based on the payroll dollar taxes that come into the state, and we receive a portion of that. And then within that portion that we receive, we have broken it down to 8 different projects. The ones in red, however, those are funds that we received last year, and we put it in a reserve account, and it can only be used for specific projects. All the other projects, the projects that are in black, those are funds that we have not yet received. We will receive the first allotment around the beginning of July. The spot where that kind of makes it tricky with service is then as the quarters progress throughout the year, we have to keep a very close eye on it, as well as our service that we've put out, to make sure that we're not overspending and putting us in a bad position. Okay, so the first project. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through each project, and let me know if you have any questions as we go through and kind of discussing what we are planning to do for each project. Project 1 is the Low Income and Student Fare Program. This is a program that it's in its 4th year now, or will be in its 4th year. The Gorge Transit Connect program is something we actually started with help from the Columbia Gorge Health Council. And we used some grant funds to get it started, and it's kind of evolved into this very interesting program that works with the local partners, organizations that have clients that are low-income clients, and we help them understand the services and what's available, and then they in turn work with the clients and give them passes. This year we've changed it a little bit, where instead of just necessarily giving out free passes, we've asked those partner organizations that have transportation funds available to buy discounted passes in order to give to their clients. There was a little bit of a shift there, but what it does is it allows us to use the funds that we have received. So we use state funds. We also use funds that we've received from the city of Hood River. It allows those funds to last longer and serve more clients. Any questions about the Gorge Transit Connect program? All right. And so that uses, the Gorge Transit Connect program uses about a little less than half of those $27,000. We reserve that for the Gorge Transit Connect program. The student fare program, so all middle and high school students receive free Gorge passes that they can use. We've used kind of a couple of different iterations of distributing the passes, and we found what works best is to distribute them at back to school night with a note to their parents of just going over what this does, and it provides their students with access to not only local services, but they can potentially get into Portland as well. I have seen, and this is more of an anecdotal measure because we don't really have a great way to track this from a data standpoint, but anecdotally, when I ride the bus, I see a lot more high school students and middle school students as well using the bus, which is great to see. And the intent is not for people to use the CAT bus instead of the school bus, but more of a way to provide access to services outside of those school hours or to extracurricular activities, or to get around town on the weekends or during breaks. So that is the intent of the pass. It's not necessarily to be used instead of the school bus system. I am working with the superintendent's office this summer to go over the program for fiscal year 24, so this upcoming school year. And then also my intent is to work more with the high school to engage the high school students more than what we have in the past. I think there still is definitely some opportunity for us to help those students understand how they can use the passes, but just ensuring that the passes do get in the hands of students and that they know what to do with them is kind of the big thing. Whereas they're given them, but I think there are some concern that sometimes they then don't know what to do with them. So that's what we're trying to resolve. And I'd love to hear some thoughts if you guys have any suggestions or have any knowledge of this potential rep.
I think this is like a great opportunity to like really encourage the school district to offer more like volunteer, like kind of like programs where I feel like I know a handful of high schoolers who want to do more volunteer work and just want to do something in our community, but it's always like, you know, transportation is always like something that's brought up by their parents as well. So I think that's like a great opportunity to, I guess, like work with the school district and see if they're able to, you know, support the idea of encouraging students to do more volunteer work and then providing CAT as like a main way of transportation for them.
Okay, that's actually a very interesting idea. Do you by chance know anyone of who is in charge of those volunteer programs, or just something to kind of dig into more?
I think that's something that could be dug into more because I mean, it could be, let's see, I know like they have like the migrant program and I know that they try to encourage their students to do more volunteer work, but I don't think they have anything in place yet.
Okay, yeah, no, I think that could be an exciting opportunity, especially if we can work with them now rather than later. Then we can help potentially shape what those volunteer programs are so that they are compatible with transit. And that would be great. Awesome, thank you. Any other thoughts? Okay. We'll move on to project number 2, targeted service to vulnerable populations. So this typically, so we did get a grant a couple years ago for our Portland Medical Shuttle, which provided service, kind of dollar ride level service from the Gorge community, specifically the Dalles and Hood River and Cascade Locks, and taking people into Portland for medical services. And it's, I think one of the reasons why we did this pilot project with this grant was to really understand what the need was, and to understand, you know, when the need is, what is the actual demand, and then kind of going from there. I think what we've learned from that is there is need and demand, but I'm not sure doing it on the days that we do it is really the way to do it. So we're still, I think, trying to figure that out, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. And Taylor and Lexi, I know you have individuals that you represent that do use this service every once in a while, and any feedback you may have heard. But what we've done is so that grant has ended, or will be ending, and so we have moved it under these project funds. But again, we're still kind of tweaking if we need to change it to make it so that there is more demand. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, is this the shuttle that has been $20 each way in the past?
Mm-hmm.
Is there any discussion about adjusting that price? Because I know that's kind of out of reach for a lot of my residents.
So I think we can potentially look at that. I think what I would also maybe suggest is how we could maybe loop this under our Gorge Transit Connect program and offer essentially subsidies for low-income community members who need to use this service and don't have access to the NEMT services.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to think about, because it sounds really awesome, but then it's like, oh, $20 each way is a lot, you know. Just yeah, Yeah,
I know, I completely understand that. And then I think the other thing too is maybe and if that doesn't make the most sense, then maybe how could we potentially utilize the Columbia Gorge Express And then also some sort of, that kind of that first mile, last mile issue of getting them to the medical appointment for those who could use the Columbia Gorge Express. That might be less limiting. And again, we probably have to look at some sort of subsidy.
Yeah, that could be interesting because of all the transportation that's already available there, just working on how to communicate it to folks who don't go in as often.
Mm-hmm. But then also making sure that they can safely get to their medical appointment.
Yes.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Okay. The other service that these Project 2 funds will address are the Upper Valley and Cascade locks and deviated fixed routes. So I think the things to know, so it would help with the match funds for these different grants that pay for the majority of these services. And we are looking at a potentially different solution for Cascade locks. And this is something we've discussed in the transit master plan process as well. There is low ridership on that service, and I have to wonder if this is maybe not the most cost-effective way to address the needs. We have retained it because we want to make sure we're meeting the needs, as there are some very vulnerable populations who do use this service, but it's not necessarily a service they use technically every day. So I think the thing we got to figure out is, does this, and we have to work with the community, and if you have any thoughts of who specifically in the Cascade Locks community we should reach out to more, besides just the actual riders, is if maybe a mobility service where we have some sort of like kind of almost micro transit option where that would go pick them up and then bring them to the Columbia Gorge Express, and then they'd use the Columbia Gorge Express to get to Hood River. That would give them more options throughout the day. That is a potential thought that we've been kicking around. And this has been, we described this in the transit master plan, and the action to be taken is to do more community outreach to really figure out what the most appropriate way is to address the community members there in Cascade Locks. Okay. All right. Well, if you have any thoughts, or if you're if you do come across anyone in Cascade Locks, let me know. Or Kevin, looks like you might have been ready to say something.
No, just was going to agree with you, Amy, that community outreach critical to understand what people need, when they need it, where they are starting and ending, and unfortunately, I don't have a good connection for you in the Cascade Locks community.
And it's really interesting because on our transit master plan, when we put the surveys out in the community and we went to the different areas to get feedback, the majority of the community members did say that they did want a formalized deviated fixed route service. But then the ridership isn't necessarily matching it. So, it's telling me that there's a couple different things happening there. It could be that we're just not providing it at the right times. It could be that maybe people in theory would love to have it, but then they don't necessarily use it. So I think that's what we have to figure out, and I think it's going to just be a much bigger outreach process. But in the meantime, it is something that we might have to maybe address in a different way, potentially do dial rate services instead of having a deviated fixed route. Okay.
Yes, have you connected with anyone from Bridges to Health to see if they have any patients of theirs who are saying that lack of transportation is a big need?
Yeah, so we have a couple individuals at the Wyeth and Lou site that Rosie works with. And so they are one of my prime clients that I want to make sure that we're addressing and figuring out the best way to help their transportation needs. And then that is a good suggestion, though. I don't think I've necessarily asked any of the other health workers to see if they have other clients in Cascade Locks, to see if maybe I could do more of a focus group with them and sit down and truly understand their needs. So
Yeah,
thank you.
that'd be great. Yeah.
All right. So for project 3, outreach and awareness of services. So a portion of these funds are going to go to the mobility manager, travel trainer. They're the one that manages the Gorge Transit Connect program. So this is Sarah Crooks. She also works with vulnerable populations and does a large amount of outreach. She is just a driving force of ensuring that vulnerable populations understand our services, but also just does a lot of great work in the community. And everywhere she goes, she's just talking about CAT and transportation in the Gorge. So it's wonderful. And also some brochures and website. So a couple of the things that have really kind of stood out for me is well, increased user interface. That doesn't make sense. I meant to say improve user interface with our website. I think our website can be easy once you understand it and once you've used it several times. But if you haven't used it, it can be a little bit clunky. And people might not understand, oh, you know, the Columbia Gorge Express is in between Portland and Hood River. Or, you know, the Dalles starts in Hood River and goes to the Dalles. There's a lot of just little nuances that you don't necessarily know until you've used it a lot. And my hope is to reduce that and make it easier for folks who are those first timers and maybe haven't used transit before, and they can go to the website and they can clearly understand that. Brochures is another thing. We now have several brochures, and I'd like to combine the round trip or the year-round services that we don't change and put them on one brochure. And then when we have seasonal services, then we would just do like those little one-off rack cards that we could include. But I think we really need to focus on simple and I want to say simple language, but that's not the term.
You mean plain language?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really ensure we're doing plain language and using our community resources to making sure that that's the case. Any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I love the idea of kind of making the brochures and information more clear. So I have the feeling like when I'm helping residents, like, oh, we got to check what's most up to date, but then there's the printed things, and you give paperwork to somebody and they hold on to that, but things might have changed, and just how we can make sure that if there are things that don't, like if we have a schedule that is the same throughout the year, that's clear and not just marked as seasonal, because that can trip people up and be a slight barrier.
Yes, 100% understood. And that we've gotten to the point where our services really shouldn't change that much, like the times that we do year round. I think the one tricky spot that might be a little confusing on how to communicate is going to be our Columbia Gorge Express, because during summer we'll have that expanded service. But year round we'll have those seven trips a day. When we go to that. So I'll keep you guys in the loop on that and ask for your feedback when we get closer to that. That'll probably be a fall project.
Amy, is the website, even if it's a little clunky, is it in Spanish too, or is it only in English?
No, you should be able to Google Translate it.
Okay. And any brochures in Spanish?
They're all in English and Spanish.
Oh, great. Perfect.
There might actually, I'm sorry, I think the Dog Mountain one is not, but everything else is in English and Spanish.
Gotcha.
Amy, do
Me
you
dog-
have,
Oh,
pardon me.
sorry, Kevin. I was just gonna say Dog Mountain doesn't really, like, it doesn't really seem to be a for locals thing, right? Because you sort of have to go west to come back east.
Yeah, the Dog Mountain one, and it really wasn't intentional to not have it in Spanish. It was simply kind of an oversight, and then by the time that I realized it was too late at that point. But on our website, it does have the Spanish. You can translate it, but yeah, the Dog Mountain was really as part of a partnership with the Forest Service. And the goal is to reduce safety and congestion concerns at the Dog Mountain Trailhead. And so it's going to be typically the folks that are driving west of Cascade Locks instead of driving to driving to the Dog Mountain Trailhead. They drive to Stevenson instead. It is a way for locals who maybe haven't gotten a permit to hike on Dog Mountain, but they would have to do a little bit of backtracking. So they'd have to drive to the Skamania Fairgrounds to park there, and then hop on the shuttle and go to the trailhead. I think from the perspective of, and so just to be clear too, the Dog Mountain Trailhead service, shuttle service, that is something that we've contracted with Skamania County and the Forest Service. So there's not any local funds going straight to that. As it does, like you said, serve more either folks that are in Skamania County or visitors to the gorge.
Thanks for the info. That's super helpful.
All right. Any other questions?
And Amy, I was just going to ask, it sounds like you've got a great advocate just through the mobility manager right now, but in terms of coordinating with other jurisdictions, Jackie Vanderpoy, City of Hood River, our outreach engagement coordinator, maybe Jackie, if you've been in touch, great. Just was going to suggest some brainstorming on outreach techniques and how things have evolved, through the pandemic and where we are today. And yeah. Okay. Nubia Contreras, of course, at the City of the Dalles. And I don't have a good contact in the City of Cascade Locks right now. I think Jordan Bennett is my contact there.
Yeah, you know what? Now that I'm kind of thinking about this, I kind of wonder if we could create like a jurisdiction outreach kind of committee almost, so that we can all kind of put our heads together and maybe come up with some ideas on kind of more the public side, not necessarily because we're doing all this great work with our local social service organizations mostly, but I wonder if we could do kind of like a mini committee with the outreach representatives of the different cities and jurisdictions, and to really kind of pull in of what we can work together to do and make sure we're kind of communicating all the same message. I have talked to Jackie though, and actually talked to her most recently. But I think as we start implementing this transit master plan, it's going to be super important to work with her in the planning department in general, and the public works department for these mobility hubs that we're looking at adding, as well as formalizing the stops. And that's something I'm working with Randy on, because I think it's really going to be important that we're all on the same page and the city feels comfortable with us moving forward with these formalized stops. And then the mobility hubs, how we can work together to really make it a space that is utilized and people feel proud of. And safe. Safe is my big one. And for those of you who might not be as familiar with our mobility hubs, the transit master plan is really kind of centered around these mobility hubs that will act as transportation nodes for the community, and they'll be in different spots within the county, and they're going to look a little different depending on the site. So, for example, the CAT transit office is going to be a mobility hub. We have a park and ride here. We would like to add potentially bike share or maybe car share, or maybe a bike repair station. But of course, then we also have multiple transit providers going to the stop. And there's a mobility hub at the port. As the Lot 1 development occurs, we are hoping to be involved in that with the port, and we are working with the port on that. Final designs we haven't gotten there yet. They're still working through a large amount of things, but the intent is for us to work together with the port to have a transit hub there, which will mostly just be different providers stopping there. But of course, you have a car sharing station that's there, and hopefully as the years progress, there will still be car sharing there even as that grant goes away, and maybe bike share or whatever. And of course, it's in quick walking distance to a bunch of restaurants, etc. And then up in Parkdale or Odell, there again is probably going to be a bigger park and ride component, especially when the Gorge to Mountain Express goes year round, as the intent is to make it so that individuals can use that service for not just recreating necessarily on the mountain during the winter, but also have access to transit to get into town or go up to the mountain year round for school, work, food, etc., etc. Because right now the access from Parkdale specifically is fairly limited. All right. Any other questions on that? Okay. So maintain as existing services. So it all kind of goes into the match and operating expenses of our different year-round and seasonal services that we have, excluding Dog Mountain. The intent is majority of these services are being funded mostly through other funding sources, but this is really just to provide our match for those services. All right, any questions on that? All right, so next project, van pool and mobility services. So I am excited to say that we are progressing with van pool. We are working with Commute Options, who has successfully implemented van pool opportunities in other places, specifically in Bend, and they work with Commute Enterprise. But the intent here is to work with local organizations within Hood River County who have employees who are trying to get to work, who cannot use transit service either because of their location or their shifts are outside transit service times. We're also hoping to add some eligibility requirements since we will be subsidizing the van pool, not completely, but to a degree. And that we're still kind of trying to work on the language because we don't want to limit it so much where the organizations are unable to make it work because they can't get drivers who have valid driver's license. But also the intent is to ensure that low income workers or low wage workers have access to this before other or higher wage earners. Any questions or thoughts on that, or maybe ideas of how to word that? I won't lie, it's kind of a tough nugget of how to to do it with keeping best practices in mind.
It sounds like commute options kind of provides a template, so maybe there's some things we can borrow from their operation.
Yeah, I've been working with them. They are also, I think in general, we're all kind of waiting to hear a little bit what ODOT says, because they're doing a subsidy program as well, with the same intent in mind. But yeah, but I think that's probably what's going to end up happening. I was just honestly curious, since you guys are so intertwined in the community, if maybe you had some ideas. But really the intent is to ensure that low-wage earners have access to this service and reduce some transportation barriers to get to and from work. And actually, I think I might take your suggestion, Gisela, from earlier, and maybe reaching out to the community health workers.
I was going to add to language that I think the libraries use for certain things, like the free passes to museums and the parking at trailhead passes, I think I don't think they check, right? So it's sort of a trust thing, but they have income requirements, but also if anybody in your immediate household qualifies for Oregon Health Plan or SNAP benefits, you're automatically considered eligible.
Okay.
So those were some things I was thinking of.
Okay, that makes sense. And that's actually kind of a question. I wonder if I would assume probably not, but do you know if some of the organizations, like some of the packing houses, get that information of their employees? If that is something, if they're qualified, I'm thinking just,
No,
okay.
I mean, they could know based on how much they're paying them, but it's up to an individual to end up applying for those benefits, and it doesn't come back to the employer.
Yeah, I was just thinking if maybe there are some grants that some of those organizations might apply for because of maybe some of those, but I don't know. And yeah, I think that would probably be information they wouldn't have. Okay, great. And then so the other is mobility services, which we already kind of discussed about for Cascade Locks, of potentially looking at that DVA fixed route in a different way and how that would be, and some alternative solutions to that. I will say we also are applying for a grant, the carbon reduction grant, and still trying to finalize exactly what's going to be in there. But potentially we're looking at an e-bike lending library, as well as maybe car sharing and maybe bike share. But those are honestly probably for future grant applications. Okay, and then the next project is Program Reserve. Really to, as you all know, this past couple of years has been a whirlwind, and it's really hard to predict what expenses are going to be, specifically with anything where supply chain might be mixed in, specifically labor and parts for vehicles, and then gas, and then as well as match for capital grants. So when we apply for capital grants, we're making an assumption that a vehicle is going to cost X and Y, or an X amount of dollars. But with inflation, of course, that's been going up. So if we haven't, so what's been happening is we've had to pay more for our vehicles. And of course, that hasn't necessarily been taken into account. So having this program reserve helps us still get those vehicles even at that higher rate, and not dig into our reserves. Okay, and then project 7, it's for capital expense and replacement. This has specific funds for match for vehicle purchases. We did have some rollover funds that we were expecting to put into next year, but however, since then, we have actually already gotten those vehicles. So we did use those dollars for those match funds. And that doesn't affect the our STIF plan for the next 2 years. And then project 8 is ADA improvements. These were funds that we had originally had for the last biennium, but we did not do the improvements because there's just so much happening. I didn't want to improve some of our ADA access to the bus stops without having our transit master plan in hand. So I really wanted to have that so that I could go to the city and work with the city, as well as the other jurisdictions, and say, hey, this is our plan. This is what we want to do. This is based on feedback from the community. Help us. How can we make this happen? And I don't want to change things after we've already paid to do them. And also, I want to be a good partner, so I don't want to change my mind. So that is why those funds got pushed back. Any questions on that? All right. So our next steps is our meeting in fall 2024. And at that time, I'm going to review the fiscal year 23 progress report. So what we've done this current fiscal year and what are some lessons learned. And I will also give you a quick update on anything else that may have changed from now until fall 2024. Any questions? Any thoughts? Did you learn anything today that you did not know before?
It was a good update. Thank you for taking the time.
Wonderful. Great. Well, thank you, everybody. I am going to give you 11 minutes back on your Wednesday on this beautiful day. So you can go rest up for your evening workout or just enjoy sitting down and maybe being outside and sitting on the porch, because that's always fun. All right. Well, thank you so much and have a great night, everyone.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
all of your
Thank
work, Amy.
you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye.